Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and well, today I just wanted to kind of highlight a series that I've been doing on live streams, or when my internet is apparently not good enough to live stream. I typically just record the states that I was intended to do, and I'm putting them together on this map. And I've got over here what each district is so far and who stands to advantage. Now, this is basically, I'm trying to play as each state. So if it has state legislative control, I try to play as that party. Or when I say play, I try to draw it as if I were the party in power or in control. So, for example, I also try to comply with some of the rules. Idaho, for example, has an independent commission, so I just tried to draw reasonably fair districts there in Idaho. However, let's choose a state where. All right, so in Georgia, the Republicans control the state and the redistricting process. And yeah, so I tried to go through and draw it how they might do it. But the thing is, I also decided that in certain cases, I was going to be a bit more aggressive than I otherwise would have been with this. Because there's going to be a very short window between when a state gets the census data that they need to actually draw the districts and when those maps are actually needed. In some cases, like in Texas, there's going to be like a 3-week period for the state legislature to actually draw the map. And in some places, they get the state is actually going to wind up getting the information they need after their state constitution requires them to have the new maps out, which is interesting. So some states, I think Ohio is one of them, they're suing the Census Bureau to get the information faster, basically, on time, which is supposed to be at the end of this month or April. Yeah, it's not going to happen. So the real reason why I've gone aggressive because of that is any litigation is going to take far longer than the time. Basically, the 2022 midterms will have happened by the time you get any litigation moving forward. And cases can sometimes take 2, 3, sometimes 4, 5, 6 years to actually make it through the appeals process. And even if it goes to the Supreme Court, you may have these maps for a decade and a half, even if they are completely illegal, simply because of the uniqueness of this timeline. So certain places, such as, I'm going to use Georgia and Florida as an example, those state legislatures and state governments have almost an incentive to break every redistricting rule they can get away with in order to maximize partisan advantage. So we're going to look at Alabama, which the reason I've done it like this with 6 districts, I could certainly draw a VRA district here. But I think Alabama's Republican Party is the type that's going to try and argue, well, we lost a district and it would be more of an obvious racial gerrymander if we were to draw a district that, some people would argue that the VRA would require us to draw. And therefore, we didn't want to violate constitutional precedents set up in Shaw v. Reno, or the more recent North Carolina case where North Carolina's 12th, the very famous North Carolina 12, was ruled unconstitutional, even though it was a map that had been ruled constitutional for quite some time, simply because it was creating Voting Rights Act districts. Yeah, it was an interesting situation. Alabama may try to use that as precedent for actually getting rid of a VRA district. Arkansas, I'm going to be honest with you, Arkansas, I think, is one of the few southern states that, despite having a very high black population, doesn't have to draw a VRA district. Louisiana, I tried to make it the opposite and make sure that every seat other than one was safe Republican. So I went from Nolens to Baton Rouge, and yeah, it's sketchy. I'll be the first to say that this district is very sketchy, but it works. Florida, I was surprised at how easy it was to get to do to draw this map in Florida, and basically, as you can see, you've got one Democratic district here in Orlando. And then Miami, you've got 5 Democratic districts there, but you've got the 20th, which is kind of the Cuban VRA district. And I decided to, if I remember correctly, this is also a majority Cuban district, which is contiguous there and there. Yeah, that one is very cursed in terms of images. And I wanted to see if I could actually create another Republican Miami-Dade area district. So, yeah. In Georgia, slightly edited the second, changed where the third was. Now, these 4 districts right here are definitely a little bit more competitive than maybe they need to be. These 3 are pretty safe. Extended the 12th into the Atlanta suburbs when it extends almost all the way down to Savannah. North Georgia is, very heavily Republican. And, yeah. It was, 2 Atlanta districts that are both Democratic, and that's it. That said, there would very likely be another. I would almost want to say that 1 or 2 Democrats would also win elsewhere in the state. Kentucky, that's pretty easy. They're going to try and make one of the districts a lot less competitive. It's, I think, the current 6th. I think I maybe kind of shifted things around a bit too much, but whatever. Connecticut, you need a 2/3 majority in their state legislature in order to pass a map. So the Republicans are going to wind up actually having a say in this, and they're going to try and insist on a competitive seat being drawn. Move over back to Indiana. I don't think it's unlikely that Indiana's Republican Party is going to try and draw out the Indianapolis district, just because it's a lot easier to do than it is to draw out Gary, Indiana. You can do both, but you create a ton of competitive districts, and that would lead to some problems in a very heavy wave year. Democrats are going to try and eliminate a Republican district in Illinois. I'm skeptical whether or not that will happen, but it is very, very likely that they will be able. The other problem is actually that a lot of this area outside of Chicago is becoming much more favorable to the Republican Party. Now, if we zoom in on Chicago, we can see why Illinois is kind of an exception to going aggressive with a state that the Democrats have complete control over. And why would I do this? Well, Illinois, I don't think the Democrats are going to try and screw up these VRA districts. So the first is going to stay roughly where it is. The second is going to stay roughly where it is, maybe extend a little bit further downstate. All the districts are going to stay roughly where they are. The fourth is going to need to absorb a few more neighborhoods and a few more areas. But they can do that and still keep it a heavily majority Hispanic district. So that kind of leaves a little bit of ground that Republicans may be able to pick up on. And that's kind of a problem for the Democrats, because in a state with 17 districts where the Republicans have, 3 and very probably 5, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more competitive districts. It means you could have a 10-7 map in favor of the GOP. In a good year for the Republican Party. 9 seats is a little bit more realistic, but that would still be a majority. In Iowa, this is one area where I think the composite favors the Democrats a bit too much. This is probably really a 3-1 map in favor of the Republicans, but the composite shows it as this. Now in Iowa, you don't get any information on where the representatives live. You don't get information on where the you don't get to draw your districts based off of where they currently sit. You can do that, because it's pretty easy to remember. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4. And Iowa technically has a commission, but the state legislature can ignore it. New York is very similar. But New York, you need a certain threshold in their state government and their state legislature to override the commission. Iowa, I don't think you need to have a threshold. I may be wrong on that one. But yeah, so Iowa is a unique state in that it is also a very swingy state. So it's very possible that this could be a 3-1 Democratic map. Just depends on the year. Kansas, I think the Republicans are going to make a few slight changes. Namely, they're going to push the 4th a little bit, switch out where the 3rd is, and have the 1st go from, I believe this is Kansas City, and including a little bit of Topeka and rural Kansas. The 2nd going straight from Kansas City on down south, and this including a little bit of Topeka all the way to Wichita. Colorado has an independent commission, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure how they're going to draw it, but chances are you're going to wind up, and see, this is, I probably should have just included, where is that? This is Denver, Colorado Springs. I forget what town is right here that forms the 4th. They're probably going to draw a 5-3 or a 4-4 map where a few districts are competitive. The 3rd is probably going to be competitive. Some of these districts are going to be competitive. I don't know how realistic it is to draw a competitive Democratic seat in Colorado, though. Going down to Arizona, I decided to try and keep the map relatively the same. About the only difference is, instead of lumping Tucson into the 2nd, I decided to give Tucson its own district. Again, the idea is let's not split up urban areas if we can avoid it. I tried to keep the Phoenix area roughly the same. Probably could have done a little bit better with the fourth. And honestly, some of these lines probably should be cleaned up a little bit. But you've got a few competitive districts there in Phoenix. Idaho, well, you're never going to change that. California is also kind of another one that you're not going to really change. I think their independent commission is going to try to keep districts roughly where they really are. It does always irritate me that these islands are in not just different counties, but also different different congressional districts. That really irritates me. But yeah, the chances are the Republicans are probably not going to see too many gains. I actually think the 44th here is very close to a real life district that the Republicans hold. But this map has, I think, 9 GOP seats. I could actually realistically see them in this map getting 10 or 11, maybe even 12 or 13, depending on the year. And whatever the actual California commission comes up with is probably going to be just a little bit more fair. But we'll see. There's a lot of time left to play. As we go further, one of the things we're going to notice is that the Republicans are almost certainly going to very aggressively in the South try to be getting rid of Democratic districts that they can, basically drawing them out. And the best way for them to do that is to just crack a lot of areas. So I'm going to see, maybe I'll go a bit more aggressive in Texas, but I don't want to go too aggressive to try and take advantage of 2022, simply because if I were to do that, I would ruin the opportunity to future-proof the map, which is one thing that I'm going to try to do. So I'm going to try to be as aggressive as possible while also future-proofing. Mississippi, I still think they're going to try and keep that VRA district. Might not. Tennessee, they're going to keep Memphis, draw out Nashville almost certainly. South Carolina, I could see South Carolina trying to make the same argument that Alabama will, except they'll say, well, they'll try to justify getting rid of the one Democratic district, which is majority African American. North Carolina, we'll see what they do. I think the Republicans will try to do a partisan gerrymander, but we also may see them try to resurrect the 12th. And I'm still unsure whether or not I want to draw a map like that. Ohio, it is possible to do a 15-0, but they're probably not going to do that. They're probably going to limit it to Columbus and Cleveland and try and get a 13-2. Pennsylvania, split control. Michigan, split control. Wisconsin, split control. Minnesota, split control. Actually, Michigan has an independent commission, so it doesn't even matter. New York is going to be an interesting one. And there's going to be a few other interesting maps, too. Anyway, so let's actually show you what the partisan breakdown is of the states that I've done so far. And Colorado and Iowa are even. Everywhere else that I've finished so far breaks down to 95 Republicans and 85 Democrats. So, as you can see, Republicans going very hard in in the South is kind of leading to a situation where the Republicans are going to gain a lot more. Illinois, the Democrats may go a little bit harder, but it's really difficult to see them doing that without getting rid of the VRA districts. Anyway, I'm going to end it here. If you like the content, likes, comments, subscriptions, they always do help, and I greatly appreciate it. And I do have a Patreon. There's a link to that in the description. And I'm going to go ahead and end here. If you have a nice day, everyone. I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.